start off with a question. What exactly is energy security? Sorry. Yeah, what exactly is energy security? One would perceive energy security as independence from external factors, not having to depend on other countries, other people for your energy source. We discussed nuclear as a possible solution. We discussed various different petroleum power sources. But the fact remains that at the end of the day, the uranium or whatever the base fuel is, irrespective of whatever the base fuel is, we are still dependent on another country.
Depends on the height of the man. And Dr. Karan has the same problem.
Hello? Yeah. So irrespective of the input fuel, you are dependent on other countries to provide the base, the raw material, whether it's uranium or, petroleum, oil, crude, whatever. The way I see it, the actual sustainable solution towards energy security, not immediately but in the near future, is renewable sources. But as Dr. Kane so beautifully put it, the possibilities are endless. However, renewable sources are intermittent. And as Dasgupta put it, that the renewable energy have God-made problems, which are forced to go beyond anyone's control. The solution, however, lies in storage. And today we're living in a wonderful era, a wonderful time. There are, hundreds and thousands of different companies and institutes coming up with several different types of technology. And it is my humble opinion, let's take a look at this cartoon here. It's my humble opinion that if we do not manage to solve the storage problem, renewable energy will go back to the 60s, where it's just song and dance and nothing else. Okay. What is energy storage? Storing energy allows grids to balance the supply and demand. Energy storage systems in commercial use today can be broadly categorized into mechanical, electrical, chemical, biological and thermal energy storage. To quote the Swedish Energy Agency, in the absence of storage, electricity must be used when it is produced. This requires a system that is constantly able to balance electricity generation with electricity demand. Excess supply of electricity in the grid will cause the voltage and alternating frequency to rise above the safe level, causing electricity surges. Too little supply, and there will be not enough electricity in the grid for demand, causing shortages or brownouts. Let's look at the different types of energy storage. Starting with solar thermal. We all are very familiar with photovoltaic technologies and the panels. But one of the emerging technologies today is concentrated solar power, so solar thermal. Giving an efficiency of almost double of the panels, the largest problem has always been that if you set up a solar thermal plant, you may need to augment your fuel source with coal or biomass to run in the night. However, now they've come up with technologies where using different molten salts, which have the capacity of storing heat energy to the extent of 500 to 600 degrees. We can now store the heat energy and just open the tap in the night or when there's no sun, and we can generate power 24/7. This technology, however, is in the pilot project stage and has not yet come to commercial scale, but there are quite a few proven pilot projects out there to the tune of 10 to 15 megawatts of storage, ranging from California to Spain. Then the most innovative I find is wind to gas, which is highly experimental right now. Basically what it does is it uses wind energy to through water electrolysis to convert water into separate chambers of hydrogen and oxygen. This hydrogen gas can then be combusted later to then regenerate electricity when required. Now the most common form of energy storage, which most people don't even consider storage in just an energy project, is hydro pumping stations. This is a very simple technology where gravity is used, and at times when energy is cheap or abundantly available, pumped up to a height, and then when the energy is required again, it flows down and the hydro turbines generate power using it. Then there's another amazing technology called heat salts. However, this is only possible where there are naturally occurring salt caverns underground. Over here, what happens is you use compressed air. CAES, I believe it's called, compressed air energy storage. You use compressed air, pump it down into the cavern, increase the temperature of the air, and you pull it back out. As a result, using a heat exchanger, this temperature can be transferred to convert water into steam and therefore generating power. The electrical power sources, as Dr. Karan has already covered, are lithium ion, sodium sulfur, and vanadium redox flow. Some of these are in commercial production. Unfortunately, in 2011, the largest, or more like the sole manufacturer of sodium sulfur batteries, that is NGK of Japan, in consortium with Tokyo Electric Power Company, they had a major fire in one of the units, and that kind of set them back till about June 2012. Now they're back on stream, and we should see about 70 to 80 megawatts of sodium sulfur batteries coming out of Japan. Lithium ion, believe it or not, one of the leaders in this field is Samsung SDI. Yes, the same guys who make our television displays and laptops. Okay. Now, let's come to the question, why do we need energy storage? First and foremost, demand and supply. With a steady increase in renewable power sources that generate varying amounts of power, and that too only during certain hours of the day, the Herculean task of matching demand and supply is getting harder day by day. Photovoltaic, concentrated solar thermal, wind, and non-dam connected hydro are all must-run type projects and cannot be made to back down in case of a generation surge. We all know that whether it's the California energy crisis, the New York blackouts, or the Indian unified grid blackout which happened recently, it all boils down to people needing energy and overdrawing it, or people not needing energy and there being too much in the grid, thereby creating a frequency flux, where the frequency goes beyond the permissible parameter. Now, companies like Samsung SDI actually develop systems where you can use voltage regulating battery stations. So what that does is the minute the frequency starts going a bit too high, it starts drawing power, storing it. The minute the frequency drops back down and there's a shortage of power, it starts injecting it back into the grid. This not only helps in grid security and managing demand and supply, but also grid quality and reducing the electrical fatigue of appliances and devices. The second reason why it is of utmost importance that we have in energy storage is transmission bottlenecks. As most transmission capacities are usually utilized at a steady optimum point, during surges in production, generation can outstrip transmission by almost 50% of line capacities. A case in point is the Tamil Nadu wind capacity versus transmission capacity crisis, which has been ongoing for the past few years. Now, to take a look at an international case study, the ability to export excess electricity is limited by the transmission capabilities to do so. Lark and Dhaul noted that in 2006 and 7, when Danish wind production only accounted for approximately 15% of electricity generation, there were several occurrences where extremely heavy winds generated electricity volumes that exceeded not only domestic demand, but the capacity of the transmission lines to export it. A critical oversupply situation was avoided only by shutting down CHP production and 200 megawatts of turbines. As Denmark is now at 25% wind generation and will likely be nearing 40 by 2020, there is a potential for a situation like this to become more common. Now, just to impress a bit upon the case I just made about the increase in renewables and therefore the increase in requirement for energy storage for grid stability. Let's just take a look at the global capacity addition in renewable energy. Between 2009 and 2010, there's been a 26% increase in across the board in renewable energy. And in 2010-2011 was another 14%. However, renewable energy, let's just look at the solar figures and the wind figures here. Solar is at an average of 45% year on year throughout the world, and wind is between 15 to 20% annually, depending on various factors, economic situations, etc., etc. Now, as this capacity keeps increasing and our grid mix has a higher component of what we call intermittent power, we definitely need to figure out a way to manage our grids in a more efficient manner, so as to be able to switch on and switch off as and when required. And B, we do need a new type of ancillary service, where you've got generating stations, we now need to have storage stations. Starting from 50 megawatts to 1000 megawatts, we need to have storage stations at all critical bottleneck points, not only in India, all over Asia, and even in the West. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the California Energy Commission has made a prediction that by 2050, they will have over 6,000 megawatts of energy storage in California itself. Now, what does that mean in dollars and cents? Global investments in renewable power and fuels increased 17% to a new record of $257 billion in 2011. This was more than 6 times the figure for 2004 and 94% more than the total in 2007, which was the last year before the actual phase of before the acute phase of the world financial crisis. Wind is the most mature of the new renewable power technologies and has usually been the biggest single sector for investment over the years. However, in 2011, it was outstripped by solar, which attracted nearly twice as much as the investment. The total investment in solar power jumped 52% to $140 billion. By contrast, total investments in wind power slipped 12% to $84 billion, impacted by lower wind turbine prices, policy uncertainty in Europe, and a slowdown in China's previously hectic growth in wind installations. Now, keeping this in mind, we have more money pouring into wind and into solar power. Without a stable grid, without the ability to transport, without the ability to store this power, we are heading for a series of crises, one after the other. Let's just look at some of the announcements made around the world. Denmark has announced that by the end of the decade, it will produce a third of its energy from renewable sources, wind power in particular, but also solar power and the burning of biomass. Thank you, sir. Furthermore, the Danish government has set a goal of running the entire country on renewals by 2050. So if we're looking at the entire country running on solar, wind, and maybe a little bit of tidal by 2050, we need a lot of energy storage. So with the 20% energy standard mandate expected to be on the grid by 2030 and an ongoing solar ramp up to get 33% by 2020, California now joins countries like Finland and US regions like Pacific Northwest that are considering distributed storage to gain more control during times of overgeneration, congestion, and extreme system maps. India is now enforcing renewable energy purchase obligations for large utilities, distribution companies, and open access customers, boosting the renewable energy markets. And if you see here, there's a cute little cartoon. It says, so much for buying a wind turbine generating our own electricity, our house flew off. Okay. The Indian experience and why we're ripe for storage. Presently, the total installed capacity of generation in India is about 200 gigawatts. Out of this, 12% is through renewable generation, mainly wind, and balance is in the form of small hydro, biomass, and solar. As per the Forum of Indian Regulators report, states with high wind capacity installed have major problems in managing the sudden surge in generation during the early monsoon, and are forced to back down conventional generation stations in order to avoid over-frequency grid tripping. And the third and the most important factor is, as witnessed in the power exchanges, the power prices vary from a minimum of 2 rupees to an average of 9 rupees. That's a 450% variation, depending on the time of day, peak and off-peak. Now this in itself makes a commercial case for energy storage solutions. More than a smart grid, we need a wise grid, one that can store energy and use it when required, not just react to the customer's demand at the time. Thank you very much.